Hi guys. Okay, so we are going into our next concept in the review unit. This is over finding solutions to a quadratic equation by factoring. So this concept was taught right after spring break, at least at the high school level, right after spring break. So this was like the first couple of weeks of quarantine. As far as middle school, I'm not sure when you guys were taught this. It may have been during quarantine also. Okay, so to solve a quadratic equation is to find the x values for which the function is equal to 0. The solutions are called, they can be called roots, intercepts, zeros, or solutions to the equation. So they can be called any of those. To do this, we use the zero product property. It says if the product means multiplication, of two expressions and 0, then one or both of the expressions equals 0. So for instance, if a and b are expressions and then a times b equals 0, then a has to be 0 or b has to be 0. What this is essentially is saying, if I multiply two things together and I equal 0, right? We have three options. We have option number 1 where I do a number other than 0, times 0 equals 0. Or I could have 0 times some number other than 0 equals 0. Or I could have 0 times 0 equals 0. So essentially what this is saying is one of your two numbers has to be 0. If you're multiplying two things together and getting 0, then one of those two things have to be 0. When we're talking about quadratics, one way to look at a quadratic is like this. This is the quadratic equation, okay? We see that as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c are all numbers. And we have to have an x squared value in there, okay? Or a variable to a squared power. So that's a quadratic. This is factoring a quadratic. This is right here is factoring that quadratic. If I FOIL it or multiply it, I do x times x, which is x squared, x times 2, which is 2x. Then I do inside. 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 2 is positive 10. I get x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0, because 2x's and 5x's together makes 7x's. So this guy factored started out as this quadratic equation and became this when we factored it, okay? We're going to talk about today going from this form to this form and then solving it. So when I say solving it, if I know it equals 0, just like what we were talking about before, either x plus 5 has to be 0, because that 0 times any number will give us 0, or the x plus 2 has to be 0. So to solve it, what you do is you set up that x plus 5 equals 0, and that x plus 2 equals 0 to solve that. So to get x by itself, I subtract 5 from both sides, so I get x equals negative 5. Or I subtract 2 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 2. So my solution is either negative 5 or negative 2. And then if I would plug that bit back in, if I plug in negative 5 here, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So 0 times whatever this thing is 0. If I plug in negative 2 here, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So 0 times whatever this thing is equals 0. What you're really finding is on that specific parabola, so if I graph these, they make a U shape. If I graph quadratics, they could be going up or down. But what you're really finding is where it crosses the x-axis. So this is saying it's crossing the x-axis at negative 5 and negative 2. I can cross in two spots. I could cross in just one spot. Or I could cross in no spots. And parabolas can be going down too. Okay, so when you're solving for it, you're finding, okay, is it crossing in two spots, one spot, or no spot? And what are the numbers it's crossing at? So if it crossed at negative 5 and negative 2, it would look something like this. Crossing at negative 5 and negative 2. Okay, so, let's sneeze. Okay. So coming down here, so that's what we're going to be doing. We are going to be solving these. So the first step to them is we have to factor them. So how I teach factoring quadratics is the following. I teach what I call the crisscross method. So we draw a crisscross. To find the number up here that goes on the top of my crisscross, you do a times c. Well, here a is 1. 1 times c is negative 30. And to find the number that goes down at the bottom of the crisscross, I use my b value. In this case, it's 7. Then what I do is I try to find two numbers, and you're trying two factors. So if you don't know your factor pairs, like what times what equals a number, so like a factor pair of 10 would be 5 and 2, because 5 times 2 equals 10. So if you don't know your factors and your factor pairs of numbers, this is where this becomes a lot more difficult. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find a number times another number that multiply to negative 30, but when I add those two numbers, I get 7. So factor pairs of 30 would be 6 and 5. There's no combination of 6 and 5 that makes 7. Another factor pair would be 3 and 10. And there is a combination of 3 and 10 that would make 7. So I'm going to put 3 here and 10 here. Now, when I multiply these two numbers, I want a negative 30. So I know that one of these two has to be a negative, right? So now I'm going to look down to this number. When I add the two, I want a positive 7. So that would mean I would have a positive 10 and a negative 3. Okay? So now I can go ahead and factor it. To factor it, all I do is put x in the front of both. Then I use these numbers. Negative 3 here, positive 10 here. So it's factored into x minus 3 and x plus 10. If I were to do what I did up here, let's see if you can see, and FOIL it, multiply it essentially, x times 10, negative 3 times x, negative 3 times n, I get this guy, okay? What I'm going to do, though, is I'm actually going to solve it. I'm going to find its roots or its zeros. So I take the first one and set it equal to 0, or the second one could be equal to 0. In both cases, I'm going to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides here, so I get x equals 3. And I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides here, so x equals negative 10. Those are my zeros. Meaning, if this were to cross the x-axis, it crosses at 3 and crosses back here at negative 10. So that's kind of what the problem would look like. Now, when entering this into Schoology, it will say the leftmost answer and the rightmost answer, or something to that effect. The furthest left answer, the furthest right answer. So if they're wanting furthest left answer, they're wanting the smallest number. So the furthest left answer would be negative 10. If they're wanting the rightmost answer, it would be your bigger number. So that answer would be 3. So that's how you would put that into Schoology. Okay, let's try this next one. So again, crisscross. When I multiply, I want 1 times 3, which is just 3. When I add, I want 4. So I need two numbers that multiply to 3 but add to 4. So that is just 3 and 1. Okay? So I'm going to x plus 3, x plus 1 equals 0. Now I set both of those equal to 0, so x plus 3 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. I subtract 3 from both sides, so I get x equals negative 3. I subtract 1 from both sides, I get x equals negative 1. Or, there's my answer. Go ahead and pause me and try number 3 on your own. See if you can factor it, or see if you can crisscross and factor it. Then set it equal to 0 and solve for its x's. Okay, and then when you're done, unpause me, and then I will be going through it right now. So go ahead and pause. All right, so crisscross it. Negative 8 when I multiply, 2 when I add. So two numbers that multiply to negative 8 but add to 2. So that's some combination of 4 and 2. I want a positive 2 when I add, so this 2 has to be negative. So this factors into x plus 4. X minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, so x equals negative 4. I'm going to add 2 to both sides, so x equals 2. All right, turn to the next page. I am going to do number 4. Okay, so if you notice, number 4 looks a little different than the ones on the other side, because on the other side I had all 3 numbers on the left-hand side. So first thing I need to do is I always need to get it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. I get x squared minus 3x minus 10 equals 0. So now it's equal to 0. Now I can crisscross. When I multiply, I want negative 10. When I add, I want negative 3. Some combination of 5 and 2 will give me 10 when I multiply, and some combination of 5 and 2 will give me 3 when I add them. I want a negative 3, so that 5 would be negative. So this factors into x minus 5 and x plus 2, and I set that equal to 0. So now I set both these equal to 0 to find their zeros. Add 5, so x equals 5. Subtract 2, x equals negative 2. I'm going to do number 6. Crisscross it again. Negative 18 when I multiply, negative 7 when I add. So that's 9 and 2. And I want a negative 7, so that's a negative 9. So now I can factor this, x minus 9, x plus 2. That still equals 0. So set both those equal to 0. X minus 9 equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0. Add 9 to both sides, so I get x equals 9. Subtract 2 from both sides, and x equals negative 2. I'm going to do number 8. It's not equal to 0, so we have to get it equal to 0, so I'm going to add 36 to both sides. X squared plus 20x plus 36 equals 0. Crisscross, 36 when I multiply, 20 when I add. Ooh, so 6 times 6 does not work. 36 and 1 does not work. 12, 24, 36, 12 and 3 does not work. 18 and 2 does work though. So x plus 18, x plus 2 equals 0. So I set both these equal to 0. Subtract 18 and subtract 2. So if I subtract 18, x equals negative 18. If I subtract 2, x equals negative 2. And there are those answers, if you can see it. Sorry. Go ahead and pause me. I want you to do 5, 7, and 9 on your own. When you unpause me, I'm going to have the answers there. I'm not going to work through it. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so now number 5. I factored that, so when I multiply I want 15, when I add I want 8. So my two factors are 5 and 3. Miss Manning was singing in the hall, so I was just laughing at her. Sorry. Okay, so 5 and 3. So I have x plus 5 and x plus 3 equals 0. I set both of them equal to 0, opposite operations to get x by itself, so x equals negative 5 and x equals negative 3. This one, crisscross it. When I multiply I want 6, when I add I want 5. You got to be careful on this one because first thing that came to my head was 6 and 1, because 6 times 1 equals 6, and some combination of 6 and 1 gives me 5, right? A 6 and a negative 1. But we have to have a positive 6 when I multiply, so 6 and 1 would not work. But 2 and 3 do work. So x plus 2, x plus 3. So I get x equals negative 2 and x equals negative 3. Last one on this page, 1 when I multiply, 2 when I add, so 1 and 1. This one, you're actually just going to have one solution. So this is one of those ones I was talking about earlier. If I were to graph it, we have an x-intercept at negative 1. So there's my x-intercept of negative 1. So it's one solution. So if this question came up on Schoology, and there were 2 blanks, you would put negative 1 in the first blank, and read the directions, but typically it'll say NA or no solution or something like that that you put in the second blank. But make sure you are reading the directions to know what it wants you to do, okay? So what I want for you to do now is I want you to go on to the next video. You can attempt the homework assignment, but the next video I'm going to go through a couple more examples with you. So you may want to do the next video before you start that Schoology homework assignment. Thanks, guys.